everyone, and welcome to Chief Chat with Fire Chief David Brogan and our Police Chief Lee Gavin. The holidays are upon us, and we want to enjoy ourselves, have a wonderful time, but we also want to be safe. And these two gentlemen are going to talk about how to be safe while we're shopping, cooking, and whatever we're doing in our city and outside our city. Welcome, gentlemen, to Chief Chat.
Welcome today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Chief Gavin, a lot of people are out there shopping, having a good time, using their credit cards, and just sort of not thinking about safety issues in terms of identity theft and things of that nature. What kind of tips can you give us? Because I never think about it. I'm always worried about plugging my credit card into the computer, but I don't think twice about giving it to a merchant or something like that. But there is danger in that. So how do we protect ourselves?
All year long we have a lot of fraud with credit cards, online purchases, but naturally near the holidays our purchases increase online and the use of credit cards in the store. So we have to be very careful. There's a lot of quick scam artists out there when you're at the counter paying for your bill at a local retailer. You know what? You set your card down, somebody behind you reach that and get it from you. That's one thing. So be aware of where your card is when you're using it. Don't set it down. Keep it on your person at all time. Naturally, with the computers, online, a lot of purchases. That stuff, it's just hard to control. Just make sure you're dealing with a reputable sales group, business store, something that you've dealt with before or you're familiar with or other people are. If not, then they can get your credit card and get your number, and then they can ring up during the holidays all kinds of fees and charges. If you have something like that, make sure you notify your bank right away so they can put a stop on your credit card. And most accounts, you're covered if someone gets your number and the bank or the lending institution can prove that someone got that number and ran up some charges. But you have to be careful. Make sure you know who you're dealing with.
No, absolutely. What about when you're at the ATM machine? There's a lot of crime that happens within an ATM machine. What can you do to keep yourself protected when you're going to get money or even depositing or what have you? I mean, what tips can you give someone?
First, what I advise our residents is plan in advance. If you know you're going to need money, go during the daylight hours. Go up to the teller and get your money out. Go inside the bank. That's the safest. As you see, a lot of the banks have their 24-hour tellers on the outside. You know what? When you pull up, make sure you pull your car up and shine the light on the ATM if that's possible. That's more light, and then when you walk to that, at least you're lit up. The banks, credit unions, they all have cameras there. That helps out. But you have to make sure when you're walking up, you don't see anybody around. If you see someone that looks suspicious, go back to your car. Let that person finish their transaction or let that person leave. Or just leave the the bank and go to another location. But try to do it during the daylight. Be aware of your surroundings, and don't take out large amounts of money. Take small amounts to get you through until the next day where you can go inside the bank or to a teller during daylight hours. You take a lot of money out, that's just a bigger target when you're grabbing that wad of money out of the ATM. If somebody is there watching you, they're going to get more from you.
And what really concerns me is when I go to the ATM, and I've heard this on so many different occasions, is that when you put your PIN number in there, people are sort of watching, and not only do they don't have to be next to you. It's like where you're positioning your hand. And so how do you protect yourself from that? I mean, do you hide it? Are you cognizant that you need to do something other than just
just try to position your body so that if someone is around there watching you, if someone's on your left, then move over to your left and kind of block the touchpad. If they're on your other side, do it that way. Just try to get closer to the ATM so you can block their view.
And naturally, like you say,
people that are good at that stuff, they know what general area you're going in, and when you leave, they could try a certain number. So just try to block it. Again, time is on your side. If you see someone behind you, have them go first. Tell them you go first, I'll wait for you. And then you've got no one behind you, and it's nice and clear, no one to watch. But yeah, we have to pay attention to our surroundings, the people around us, any cars that pull up. So, I mean, if at any time you don't feel comfortable or see somebody that doesn't look appropriate, then you know what, go back to your car, go to another bank, or wait for those people to leave.
And checking your bank statements that come into is really important. And I fail to do that. My husband's like, you know, do you balance your checkbook? I was like, no, I don't. So it's really important, especially during the holidays, I think, to make sure that we check those out. You know, there's been so many breaches too, like with Home Depot and different larger
credit card numbers and all that.
And you really can't protect yourself against that. I mean, that's just luck of the draw kind of thing.
If I could bring up, if
Sure.
unfortunately someone approached you to take your money or to rob you, give them the money. The quicker you give it to them, the sooner they'll get away, and the less violence or harm they're going to commit on you. If you put up a fight and don't give them the money, they're going to knock you down. Who knows if they're armed, if they're going to pull a weapon out. Give them the money. It's not worth your life. Let them get out of there. And then call the local, call 911. Police will respond. We'll get a description on the phone. Maybe we can catch them. But give them the money, let them get out of there sooner, and you'll prevent a lot of maybe physical harm to yourself.
What kind of tips can you give our viewers about going to the mall when you're in the car during, and it's getting darker. Oh, it's getting darker lately, unfortunately. But driving into the malls, parking the cars, especially women with their purses, and then you hear all these different things on the internet. Be careful of opening the car or something on your windshield. Just so many things that we have to be aware of lately. So what kind of tips would you give someone going to shop who has money, because they're going to go shopping, and to be safe from into the mall and back?
We're all busy during the holidays, and our mind's moving a mile a minute. We got to get this gift, get to this store, and we're not thinking. So, make sure you park in a good designated spot. Pull under a light where the car is lit. Maybe you have to park a little farther away, but pull into a spot where you get some, well-lit area. When you're walking into the store, you don't need to take a big purse. Take a smaller clutch purse, whatever, and you put it under your arm or hold it tight to you. Less chance of someone grabbing that from your arm and knocking you down and taking off. Take as small as a purse as you can. Watch your surroundings, and with all this discussion, watch your surroundings. It's important everywhere. If you see someone coming your way that looks suspicious, walk in a different direction or try to walk where there's some people. In the mall, there's always someone coming and going. So make sure you walk towards another group of people, a well-lit area.
Do you find that during the holidays, car thefts are a lot more increased within our city too, or in the surrounding
car thefts,
cities?
what we get a big increase in is, if you're at the mall, people see the items you have in your front seat, in your back seat, bags, boxes. They're going to break your window out. The way they so suddenly can get in the cars nowadays, they don't even have to break a window. They know what they're doing, these young kids. They pop the door. Nobody hears them. Open the door and take the stuff, and they're gone. Also in their residential.
Put your stuff in the trunk.
In the trunk. Lock it up in the trunk. Or, make a quick stop at home and drop it off at home. Also in our neighborhoods, we've had a tremendous rash of people that park their cars, let it be in the street, in the driveways, don't lock their doors. We all leave something in the car. We have change in the console, a cell phone, a computer, laptop, whatever it is.
Garage door opener.
Garage door opener. You know what? Throughout the city, last 6 months, we've seen a very large amount of larcenies where they go into the car, they open the door, they'll go down the street and pull all the door handles. They get 2, 3, 4 cars, doors are open, they can get the change, computers, cameras, whatever. So we get them all night long where they're going down the streets. And so make sure you lock your door on the car. Recently, in the last few weeks, over the north end of our city, we had a gentleman going around pulling the door handles. He saw a few homes that had the garages open. Naturally, most people from the garage door to the interior of the house don't lock that door. He went into the garage, opened the door, went in the house while the people were asleep. Fortunately, the people woke up and they apprehended him, held him down until the police got there. But make sure you close your garage door.
Scary. Yeah.
That prevents someone from getting into your house too. with Christmas, a lot of people coming and going all hours of the day and night. Make sure you leave your lights on, your timers, tree lights, whatever you have in the house, but leave it well lit. Another suggestion: turn the radio on. A lot of times, if somebody comes around, they hear the radio, they think somebody's home. You know what? I leave my radio on when I leave. If someone gets close to the house, they're going to hear that noise and they're going to think twice about breaking in. So when you leave, if you have a radio, just turn the radio, the stereo, whatever it is on, and you've got it.
You know, those are all great, wonderful advice. And sometimes we just don't think twice, you know. I mean, especially going shopping. I mean, for me, I'll just throw stuff in the back seat and not even think about it and go to another store. So that's something to be cognizant about. I know one of the things during the holidays many people do more often than they would during the year is drinking. Alcohol seems very, very, very prevalent. I mean, holidays and, you know, gatherings and what have you. So traffic safety, of course, is an issue, but people when they're drunk do other things as well, you know, that they normally wouldn't do. What advice do you have to people in terms of alcohol consumption, you know, the holidays, being a guest at someone's home and getting drunk isn't very guest-like. But what advice do you have for people to make sure that their responsibility for their guests when they're at their home and just being out there?
So the bottom line for the people that are attending parties and festivities is don't drink and drive.
And you're going to get them if they do.
We're going to get them. Between us, local sheriffs, and the state police, there's a lot of grant money out there and a lot of alcohol enforcement units out over the holidays. We always hear those sad stories near the holidays when a loved one is taken by a drunk driver. So the state, like I said, local, we all strictly enforce the drinking laws. A lot of drunk drivers are arrested over the holidays, and we try to keep them off the street. So, you know, make that a pledge amongst you and your friends when you go out that you're going to have one person that's a designated driver, and that person drink water or soft drinks for the night, and then, you know, make sure that that person drives everyone home, gets them home safely. Make sure you get them in the house too. Don't leave them if they're drunk and you know, disoriented with the cold weather. Sometimes they end up passing out outside, and we got to call our local firemen to revive them. So make sure you get them in the house where they're safe. Yes. But as to drinking, driving, yeah, it's a zero tolerance near the holidays. So, you know, just make the pledge yourself that from now, first of the year, you're not going to have any drinks in driving. Put yourself behind that wheel where you're going to hurt somebody else and hurt yourself in the long run.
What responsibility, if any, is it to those that are hosting guests who actually leave intoxicated and go behind a wheel? Is there any responsibility there other than just the moral kind of responsibility that you have?
There's civil liability on that. You know, we all have homeowners insurance, and that's what, if you're hosting a party and somebody was intoxicated, even fell in your own home, they can sue you, your insurance company. If they leave your house or your party, if you sponsored a party somewhere and they're intoxicated and they seriously hurt somebody or kill somebody, you know what? With the lawsuits and that, it's going to come back to get you. So you're going to be responsible. So if you're hosting these parties, house parties, you know what? And you see someone's been drinking too much, cut them off. Don't allow them to drink. Because that very well, besides them going out and hurting somebody, they're going to hurt you, because then you're going to be involved in a court lawsuit.
Absolutely. So it's a community effort,
yes,
I think, to make sure
that
people stay safe. You know, something that's really near and dear to my heart, which is the prevention of domestic violence. And I know that during the holidays, it seems to increase as well, those kinds of calls that you get. And you know, I don't think it's a coincidence, but I think it has to do with a lot of stress and a lot of, you know, people, you know, not having what they need during that time. What's your experience during the holidays with that kind of thing in terms of what you've had to deal with?
Yeah, we see an increase in domestic issues, family issues. Like you said, with the stress out there, all the stressors. You know, this time of year, people are financially struggling, financially strapped. issues. The kids are out of school, they're around the home. That creates more issues for the one-parent families, for mom and dad at home, whatever it be. So the stressors are up during the holidays. Financially, you can't afford the gifts, so there's stress and strain. And we discussed the drinking, and that increases. So you get the drinking involved with the other stressors, then you get issues at home, and you get a lot of, domestic violence. According to the law, if the police show up and someone has bruises, was physically assaulted, then, the other party that assaulted them, if they're present, they go to jail. And it's just not worth it near the holidays. It's supposed to be a time of family and get together and appreciating each other's friendship. No need to have these stressors get you down and get involved in those type of issues.
Wonderfully said, wonderfully said.
So,
We've talked about those kinds of safety issues and the moral issues that we have to think about, and also being cognizant of our surroundings. But there's also the actual physical safety that comes with the holidays, and some additional things that we deal with. What are the most calls that you get during the holidays in terms of fires caused by? Is it the trees?
Well,
is it the candles?
The holiday season in general, the candles are a big cause of fires during the holiday season, because a lot of people associate candles with the holiday season, whether it be an Advent wreath or just to help set the mood around the house, or they have scented candles. Yankee Candle has all kinds of...
Do you actually have people that use candles on their trees still?
Not on their trees,
Okay,
but
it's been done.
It has been done. Thank goodness they don't do that very often anymore. But they will have an Advent wreath, and they'll have it on their table. We've had several of those catch on fire, where you light the candle. I'm sure you're familiar with the Advent wreath tradition. And they get distracted and walk away. So we've had them go talk to their neighbors, and then they turn around and their house is on fire, because the Advent wreath itself was flammable and sitting on top of the table, and whatever else is around it can catch fire. But just candles in general, they make really good fake candles now that you really, from even 5 feet away, you would swear it was a real candle. They have them with like a...
Those little things that sort of move and you think
well,
they're
they have
real.
like a little plastic piece that will flicker around too. And so they have some really good fake candles now. If you look at the store, just because they're kind of cool too, they're kind of neat looking, but they're much safer.
Absolutely.
Just making sure that a candle is attended, making sure that it doesn't burn down too far, that the wick is trimmed, because if the wick gets too long, you can get really high flames.
Or when you're leaving the house and you leave the candles on.
Or going to bed at night. That's another big one. Yeah. That's
some
easy to do.
Some of them have the glass around them. I mean, I've left one on and left the house with the glass around it. But I mean, even that, that is even not.
Yeah, no,
you have to really
very dangerous.
be alert of those things.
Yeah, whenever you have open flame in your house, that's
scary.
a danger. Yeah, and sometimes you'll see the bigger candles, if they get within an inch or so of the bottom, you probably want to think about replacing them and really consider where you're putting them, because they get really hot on the bottom of those as well.
Trees, Christmas trees. I mean, now's the season. Everybody's putting up Christmas trees, and then you've got the argument between the real tree and the artificial tree. Right. So I mean, real trees are wonderful, but they come with a price sometimes.
They do, and so they can
and
obviously
all those
they carry
prickly
danger.
things all over the carpet
yeah,
too.
of course. Besides the mess they make, if you do want to go with a real tree, some people just have to have a real tree. A real tree is flammable, and they can burn incredibly fast. There's very little kindling there or anything in your house that's going to burn as quickly as that's going to burn, and it creates an incredible amount of heat when it burns. So they're very dangerous if they're not properly maintained, and if they do catch on fire, obviously. Where the artificial trees are much safer. There are a lot of things you could do to increase the safety if you have a real tree. Make sure that you buy a tree that doesn't appear to be dried out. You kind of shake it a little bit, see if a bunch of the needles are falling off. You want to be sure you trim the end of it, and then keep it in and put it in something that you can, where you're always checking the water levels to make sure that it stays hydrated. And even the kind of lights you use, the new LED lights, they don't create the heat especially if you remember the big old-fashioned Christmas lights, those would get so hot they would burn you to touch.
Absolutely.
The LED lights, they don't create heat like that. You still, if there's always the possibility of an electric short, but for the most part, you don't want you have a tree that's basically kindling and then put a bunch of really hot lights on it, that's a bad idea. And so you just want to be sure that you keep it very well watered. If you can use LED lights, that they're going to be a little bit safer, and make sure that when you buy it, it's not too old.
Absolutely. So artificial trees, what kind of fire hazard do they have? I mean,
they're
very little.
Yeah, very little. It's you kind of have to treat it like an electric appliance almost. If they have metal artificial trees, and so sometimes they come pre-lit, you want to be sure that they don't actually become energized themselves, which there have been some cases of.
Really, an energized Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's not the most common thing, but it is a potential. If ever you have, it's basically an electronic device.
You know what I see a lot when I go to homes that have Christmas trees is the plugs. It's one plug, one after the other, and so you've got this whole thing lined up with just one plug and one outlet.
Yeah, probably about 3 strands of lights is about good. But now with the LED, they can take a little bit more because they don't have as much of a draw on the system. But whenever you have something when you're creating a too much of a draw on any electrical piece of equipment, wherever the line goes, that your plug, if there's any kind of point of resistance, any kind of nick in the wire, any of the connections where they're a little bit loose, that creates a high resistance area, and then the electricity will create heat over and over and over. A lot of times they'll have the plugs underneath like a blanket or something, and that will hold the heat in, and then that could catch fire. And so you just make sure everything's very well maintained. You're not overloading any of the electricity. And
they have the different kinds of lights, indoor and outdoor lights. Is there really a huge difference between them? I mean, what would happen if you used indoor lights outdoors?
Well,
simple question, but I've always wondered.
You just want to be sure that may not be as waterproof as the outdoor lights, and so you don't want to get water inside any electricity either. That doesn't mix. So whether that could, you could have a case where a whole strand of lights can become energized in places where electricity is running no longer in the places where it was intended to be running, and you could have you'd have problems, any kind of problems along those lines, whether it be a shock hazard or a fire hazard.
So indoor lights inside and outdoor lights
that's
outside.
right.
But you can use outdoor lights inside.
You can.
Okay.
You can. Just don't tell anyone.
I won't.
When you're looking at a lot of those things, you want to look for the little seal, the Underwriters Laboratory seal. They do extensive testing on all of these products, and so if you're not sure, just look for that seal on it. It'll be on all the boxes. It's something that people want to have on. They want to advertise that. Yeah, this has gone through all the testing and it's a safe product.
Absolutely. We don't want any burning bushes in Dearborn Heights.
No, that's right.
A lot of issues too happen with fireplaces. Those are a major source. I mean, if you have an open flame and an open fire, so how do we keep safe? And especially the flukes. Sometimes people don't clean out their flukes during
a lot of times people don't. You should always have it cleaned every year if you're going to use your fireplace. Even if you're not using it very often, you could have an animal build a nest in there. Any kind of thing can go wrong.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so you want to have it cleaned at the start of the season every year, and they can kind of tell you the condition of it, make sure that the flue is indeed still intact, and the smoke's going to go where it needs to go. If you don't, you can get a lot of build up, and that becomes flammable itself, and that's where you get these chimney fires. And a chimney fire it can be a really hard fire to get to. Even if it's just in the flue, the smoke will start to seep out into the house. And if you just put water down the chimney, it will crack the flue even further. So there's lots of issues with a chimney fire that you have to take into consideration. But the biggest thing is have it cleaned by someone that knows what they're doing. And before you light a fire, make sure you know what you're doing. It's silly that I have to say this, but we actually have had several fires along these lines. Don't use gasoline to start a fire in your fireplace. Don't use diesel. Don't use anything except for wood and kindling and things that were designed for that. We actually had a guy, our guys pulled someone out of a fire.
That's not funny, but it has been done.
One of our lieutenants, Gary Rixella, pulled a guy out of a fire who was disoriented walking around after he started a fire with gasoline. He fell asleep on the couch. The fire spread to the gasoline, and he was in the living room, and so they got there just in time as he was just going down, and they got him out, and he was in the hospital for a couple months, but he made a full recovery. So it was I think Adam Kowalski and now Gary Rixella, who's now a captain, was on the run. He was a lieutenant at the time, but they did a real good job getting him out of there. But you don't want to take a chance doing something silly like that. So just use common sense. And you might want to light a piece of newspaper, hold it in the chimney, and then it'll create the draft, and you'll make sure you see the smoke going up. Make sure the flue is open actually if you do something like that, and because sometimes the cold air can be pushing down, and if you try to start a fire, it just creates a lot of smoke at first before it creates the heat, and the cold air can kind of make the smoke come back into your house. Yeah, that's not as much of a danger. But
yeah, I have a natural fireplace, but I'm always very leery about using it, just because you just never know, you know, and when you have kids around too, and you have a lot of people in the house, and I mean, it's beautiful, but
yeah,
you never know.
You never know, absolutely. Yeah. We talked a little bit about this, and fire salts, which I guess is something that people use to create like colored flames that come out of the fireplace. But very few people realize that it causes a lot of gastrointestinal irritation and vomiting, and children are really, really, really sensitive to this. So I know people probably be using those during the holidays just to make it look nice.
Right.
But
yeah, we recommend against
those kinds of things. Sure.
We think you should just use dry season, hard, intended for fireplace firewood. You don't want to burn anything else in there. Even we talked earlier about some people take their Christmas wrapping paper and put it in there, and it could just it burns so quickly, you know, it can surprise people. And if you have a big wad of it, then it's going to go right back to everything else that you've got in your hand. So just wood in the fireplace.
Sure. And you know, sometimes we forget about entire members of the family, pets during the holiday season, keeping them safe and protected. What are your suggestions for pets, especially in colder weather? Obviously, you bring them in, but a lot of the dogs are larger. So how do you know when to bring in your pet?
Well, as far as if we always say, unless you. Even though they have their fur coats and everything, they still get cold just like anyone else. You don't want a dog that you're just going to leave outside. You want your dog to be a part of the family. Bring him in the house or her in the house. You don't want to leave a dog outside. They're susceptible to frostbite just like anyone else. It's not like they can really make a real good den out in the yard. They need to be inside with their family. That's where they belong.
I thoroughly agree.
And that also reminds us of candles. This happened at my house. A cat walked too close to a candle and caught her tail on fire and so that's something else to keep in mind if you have cats, because they can be very curious about candles. They obviously don't realize the flame and they walk right by them, and so you have to be. I mean, my cat wasn't hurt. We put the fire out really quickly, but you have to.
Still, that's
just something to keep in mind. You don't want to have if you have a lot of, how cats can be. They could go walking around anything, and if you have a lot of candles lit, it could be a bad combination.
While we're discussing animals, if I could just bring up real quick, the city has implemented a new animal control officer program through the ordinance department. So for our residents out there that have any issues with dogs, cats, animals, we now have a full-time officer that goes out and deals with that. So if you would contact our ordinance department, Mr. Jack McIntyre, they'll get you in touch with the right people. So for a while, we were kind of limited on our involvement with the animals, but now we have a program and it's up and working. So
great. Maybe we'll put that information
in the future.
And we'll put it up on the screen as well. There was one more thing I wanted to talk to you about, but poinsettias for children and
cats and dogs especially. Yeah, they could be poisonous. So they're a traditional holiday plant, but you don't want anyone or toddlers or anyone chewing on that. That could
and
be
they're
dangerous.
Pretty, and so they look very
they do.
enticing.
And that's another reason you should have your poison control number either programmed into your cell phone or on your refrigerator, or both preferably.
Great.
And don't be afraid to call them. They're very helpful. They can get you any kinds of information.
Great. Chief Gavin, you wanted to talk about something really quick.
Real quick, we have a new program starting first of the year. It's going to be called Ping for Alerts. What it is it's a program with the cell phones that either myself, fire chief, or emergency management, Bob Ancrap, will be able to send out notifications through the cell phones. Let it be crime alerts, some type of fire alerts, weather situations, flood. But we'll discuss more of that in the beginning of the year. But it's going to be a program where the residents will be able to sign up, submit their cell phone number, and then we'll be able to, it's like a reverse 911, but it'll go back to the cell phone. So when we get that up and running fully, then we'll discuss that in an upcoming program.
What's it called again?
Ping for Alerts.
Ping for Alerts. Sounds good. And if our residents have any issues or any problems, Police Chief Gavin and Fire Chief David Brogan are there to help you, and we will have numbers on the screen as well. Have a safe, wonderful holiday season. We'll see you soon.